Former President Donald Trump is facing ongoing threats to his life. 2 assassination attempts here in the United States. And now we are learning Iran is targeting Trump over and over and over. They're going to have to work to keep him safe. What is going to be done to make sure that the former president of the United States, our 45th, is safe? And what is the Biden-Harris administration's plan to foil Iran's ongoing plots? This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-hosts, Kayleigh McEnany and Emily Compagno. Also joining us today, journalism fellow for the Steamboat Institute and senior fellow for the Independent Women's Forum, Kayleigh McGee-White, and host of Making Money on Fox Business, Charles Payne. We'll begin with what went wrong in Butler, Pennsylvania. The Senate released a preliminary report which found the U.S. Secret Service responsible for the widespread security failures at Trump's July 13th rally. The revelations are nothing short of shocking. David Spunt is live at the Justice Department with the latest. David.
Hi, Harris. Good afternoon. 2 weeks ago, Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut told Fox News that Americans would be, as he used the word, shocked, and he also said they would be appalled when they read this preliminary report. Let's get to the highlights of the report. There's going to be a lot here, but it's important that we get through it. The first is from a local Butler police officer and what that Butler police officer told the Senate crew. The Butler commander involved in the advanced planning described the July 11th site walkthrough as incredibly disorganized, with no coordination, really just people milling about. I felt like there was no plan. The Secret Service did not give state or local partners specific instructions for covering the AGR building, including the position of local snipers. Now, Thomas Crooks, the shooter, was on top of that AGR building when at 6:11 p.m. he fired 8 rounds from an AR-15 style rifle. He killed a man named Corey Comparatori, injured 3 others, including the former president. In an interview with the committee, a Secret Service counter-sniper leader was asked, did the thought even cross your mind that you should inform someone to keep the protectee from going on stage, or if he already was on stage, take him back? Did that thought even cross your mind? Now, the answer is the thought did not cross my mind. It was more of a find out what's happening, figure out what's happening. Can we help? Can we take action? Harris, this is after there was already commotion. The report mentions how Crooks flew a drone 200 yards from the site and used a range finder. Now, he flew a drone no problem, but the Secret Service, for some reason, could not fly their drone, citing technical issues. With no backup system, the Secret Service agent responsible for overseeing the drone capabilities at the July 13th rally called a toll-free 888 tech support hotline to start troubleshooting with the company, which took several hours. That agent had only 3 months of experience working with that equipment and lacked knowledge about it. Now, this agent also admitted that he did not follow USS standard protocol when he replaced Ethernet cable with another Ethernet cable he found with the Trump campaign equipment. So the Secret Service is admitting complete fault here, saying they're going to make changes. In a statement, the Chief of Communications, Anthony Guglielmi, tells Fox News, many of the insights gained from the Senate report align with the findings from our mission assurance review and are essential to ensuring that what happened on July 13th never happens again. Former President Donald Trump is receiving the highest level of protection that the U.S. Secret Service can provide, and we will continue to evaluate and adjust our specific protectee measures and methodology based on each location and situation. And I'll end with this, and I know there's a lot of information here. This was the first time that a major party nominee had counter snipers assigned to them at a rally. Donald Trump still had not received technically the nomination yet. And the reason that those counter snipers were sent is because of the looming threat from Iran. One day before, a man named Asif Merchant was arrested by the feds in New York, and he was allegedly potentially looking at harming former President Trump, Vice President Harris, and current President Biden. So that's the reason that those counter snipers were there, to take out the shooter that day. Back to you.
David Spunt, I have said this all along. They wouldn't have even been needed if they'd listened to those bystanders with their cell phones and had flagged the fact that there was a guy on the rooftop. They could have moved him out of the way, but they didn't. David, thank you. And Charles, to that point, what we also learned from that just explosive report today was that the man in charge of having potentially to make that decision was asked. And so we could read this in the report. Did it ever cross your mind to remove the protectee from the stage? And that individual answered it never crossed his or her mind.
No, it's so interesting that this role for the Secret Service was given to them after an assassination of a president, right? And you think of all the particular scenarios that you would train for. This would be the main scenario in this particular instance, and the fact that, my main takeaway from this is a lack of communication and a lack of accountability. Mm-hmm. And no organization, no matter what size, can survive like that, but certainly one that's been tasked with the task of the U.S. Secret Service. This is, to your point, stunning, I think, is the right word.
Yeah, so Democrat Senator Dick Blumenthal, to Charles's point, called it, when it came to communications, Kayleigh, a catastrophic collapse of comms.
That's exactly what it was. Look, we know now that Iran had a threat against President Trump ahead of this rally. And you're telling me there were no visual barriers outside of the rally, and that there was catastrophic communications, to your point, and that there was not intelligence sharing with Secret Service officers on the ground that Iran wanted to take out former President Trump. You didn't have drones in the sky but for 1 hour, and a guy had to call a toll-free hotline about the drone, when meanwhile the shooter had a drone in the air for 11 minutes. All of this, and my question is, what was Kimberly Cheadle doing? Remember, she was a Jill Biden protectee. She was looking over Jill, and when she was First Lady, she gets this huge job in Secret Service. What was she doing? If I knew I had a protectee that was being threatened by Iran, I would be micromanaging that protection. What was Ronald Rowe doing? That was her deputy. He's now the head of Secret Service.
Why is he there?
Why is he there? Blumenthal has said we need a change in leadership. Rand Paul has said we need a change in leadership. I don't know who specifically they mean, but I know that's a Republican and a Democrat stating the obvious. We need to clean house at the top of Secret Service.
All right, I do want to drill down with one point you made. The drone call to the 800 line was because there was a little bit of confusion from what I've read about how to do the job of using the drone.
Yeah, the guy had only had 1 hour of training. And look, I want to be clear. Secret Service on the ground, there were heroes that day, even amid failures. There were heroes down 100%. In Palm Beach. But what training is given to you is leadership's call. You've only been given 1 hour of training. That goes to leadership. That goes to Ronald Rowe. That goes to Kim Cheadle.
So, Kayleigh, really what this all communicates very clearly is the slow rolling that we seem to be watching from the very early stages. I mean, pressure from Republicans on the Hill to get investigations rolling after that first attempt led them woefully unprepared for a potential second one. And there was a second attempt. Now, Kayleigh just mentioned that, great things have happened around some heroes there, but by the grace of God, one agent and some bystanders in Florida as well.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize what Kayleigh mentioned earlier, because what I find most disturbing about the Senate report is the unwillingness of Secret Service leadership to take responsibility for the many failures that the agency itself has admitted to. And I want to read this from the report, because the senators said that throughout their investigation, key Secret Service officials declined to acknowledge individual areas of responsibility for planning or security as having contributed to the failure to prevent the shooting that day. They are unwilling to admit their own responsibility and what happened. And this is becoming a really alarming pattern in this administration in particular, where you have top people in the administration who refuse to admit that they are public servants of the American taxpayers. Every single Secret Service leader who was involved that day should have resigned voluntarily.
Yes.
And yet it took a congressional hearing where Kimberly Cheadle was mocked by both sides of the political aisle for her to resign. Where was Joe Biden? Why wasn't he calling on her to resign himself? Where was Alejandro Mayorkas? Why hadn't he fired her? This should never have happened. And the fact that Secret Service leaders are still not stepping down is really troubling.
Yeah, well, we know where Joe Biden was. I mean, he was trying to figure out what just happened. I'm not on the top of the ticket anymore. I mean, there were so many things, shiny objects around that White House politically, and it's hard to argue that there were not. That I wonder if this didn't get what it really needed from the beginning, from the very, very top. A president talking about a former president with attempts to kill him. I do want to mention this. Emily, there's a difference between a my bad taken responsibility, which we saw a tiny bit of from acting director Ronald Rowe at that hearing last week. A difference between responsibility and accountability. Like, okay, if they don't want to accept responsibility, that's one thing. Accountability can be forced on you.
Right. Everyone's asking all the right questions. So first of all, bird's eye view, we have a credible, specific threat from an enemy terrorist-backed state that then leads to absolutely ineffective, incompetent execution from the leadership of the Secret Service tasked with protecting a former president. And then we have the leadership refusing to step down. We have secondary leadership saying, oh, I got this. But at the end of the day, the colossal amount of cohesive failures in this granular way at every step of the way is so frightening when you put that against the landscape of, well, the reason the counter snipers were there was because, again, of a credible threat from Iran. And the administration didn't come out and say, hey, guys, let's batten down the hatches right now. We have things going on from Iran. Let's make sure everyone is safe. Where is any type of execution on that? Where is any type of leadership on that whatsoever? We already had our faith in the leadership of the Secret Service decimated prior to that. And so now you're going to tell me that the test ground was from a former president? And that a kid essentially is what got through? I mean, all of this is absolutely frightening. And I'll tell you this, my next fear is that this is just going to blow over into the next news cycle.
No, that cannot
up again.
That cannot happen.
I hope
Look,
not.
I don't care that this administration, particularly the woman who's running for the White House, doesn't want to talk about foreign policy, let alone Iran, but they better deal with this.
They better.
Like, this is not going to go away.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.